I don't know if you've noticed, but expert advice on achieving your goals has gotten a drastic makeover in recent years, and you won't believe what classic advice actually has been proven to be myths, and some of this advice actually works against you. I'm a neuropsychologist that has studied achievement psychology for many years, but I decided to revisit the science of goal achievement before making my 2024 goals, and boy was I surprised on some of the new data we have on goal getting and wiring our brains actually for success. The new way of goal getting is based on the latest neuroscience to wire your brain to get started, stay motivated, and to put your goal achievement on autopilot. So if you've been blindly following stale goal getting advice and wondering why you could never get your ish together and actually achieve your goals, this video is going to help you apply the latest techniques with practical tools to wire your brain for success. So let's jump right in and give your goal getting a makeover. And as a side note, a lot of the updated science in this video comes from the researchers on the screen, and I have linked all of my resource and studies referenced in the description below in case you want to dig deeper into the science. So the first shift we're going to talk about is increasing your willpower and discipline to addressing your stage of change. Do you have a goal that you can't figure out how to actually stick with and achieve? You're not lazy, you're just approaching it wrong. So while the research on this has a long history, the reason I'm putting it in this video with the new data is because it's the first step in the goal getting process that is largely overlooked. And what is usually overlooked in the goal getting process is this first step of deciding what stage of change are you in. Any new goal requires a change of behavior to learn, to grow, and to achieve. And what extensive research shows us is that your ability to make effective change depends on what stage of change you're in. And more importantly, your goals will be different depending on what stage you're actually in. So I'm not going to talk too much about this because I have an entire video on this that dives into the 5 stages of change and what to do depending on what stage you are in to make new habits stick, and I will link that in the description below. The next shift is motivation hack myths to science-based techniques. So this is the answer you've been looking for if you find that each year you set these big goals only to fall off track by February. It's clear that having the motivation to start working on your goals and to keep working on your goals along the way is critical to getting to the finish line, right? You got to have the motivation to start and you got to be able to keep going. The problem is a lot of the tools that we've been using to stay motivated, to get motivated, are actually just myths. The reality is our goals depend on how important they are to us and our belief in ourselves to actually get there. I want to share with you guys some things that are going to actually help you believe in yourself and believe in your ability to reach your goals. One thing that's going to help you is tracking your progress, because as you're able to see that, hey, I'm actually doing this, that's going to help you believe that you can continue to get there. And the more you increase that belief, the more it's going to increase those buffers for those inevitable challenges and failures that come along the way to actually reaching your goals. And when it comes to those challenges and failures, you want to be sure, and I mentioned this in my video on how to set goals, so you might want to watch that next, but you want to make sure that you're using the Goldilocks principle. You don't want your goals to be too easy, but you also don't want them to be too hard. What the science shows us was we want to have about a 15% rate of failing and an 85% rate of success along the way. Otherwise, if it's too hard, we'll get demotivated. And if it's too easy, we won't have the motivation, that challenge to keep going. So you want to kind of find that sweet spot of succeeding at least 85% of the amount of times that you're doing the work to achieve your goals and have about a 15% of wiggle room or like a failure rate. And doing that is going to help you believe in yourself more along the way. Another thing about believing in yourself, affirmations don't work if you don't believe in them. So I've shared this research on my channel before. If you want to use affirmations, that's great, but you want to make sure that you're using them on something you already believe in, because what data shows us is that if you use them for things that you're trying to believe in, it actually works against you because your subconscious knows the truth and it will build up more buffers and more resistance in the background of you trying to believe in this thing. So don't use affirmations unless you actually believe in them. And instead, you can use things like questions and focus wheels to be more general in what you're trying to believe rather than trying to trick yourself, because you already know what you believe in and what you don't. And by questions, I mean you can ask yourself, like, if you're trying to believe in your ability to start a business, if you don't want to say, I am, the Bill Gates of my industry every morning, because you don't believe in that, right? But you might That's kind of a weird affirmation, but let's say that you were saying that. Instead, you want to maybe ask your questions like, what would it take for me to have the confidence to start my own business? What are the skills that I need to learn? And kind of asking yourself questions helps your brain wrap around believing in that you can do it. Another technique is a focus wheel, which I have a video on, so I won't dive into it, but it's an Abraham Hicks technique to help you get on board with your goals and what you're trying to believe in. So you can use other techniques besides affirmations if you're not fully believing. And like I said before, in addition to just believing, you want to increase that value of your goal for yourself. So you want to increase how much it means to you. I like to use my Mod Ambition Planner, which I have here in the beginning of the goal planning section. There's all the things to help you define what's most important to you before setting your goals. You can do this on your own as well, but you want to make sure that it's something that's really valuable, again, so you'll have that motivation to face challenges because it's something that's important to you to be able to keep going to actually achieve the goal. So again, we'll use that Goldilocks principle. You want to be thinking about clearly defining your goals as much as you can be specific without having resistance. And you want to think about easy versus moderate versus impossible goals and try to find those moderate goals. And that's because we don't want it to be so easy because discomfort causes a shift for change in our neuroplasticity, but we don't want it to be too hard that we don't actually try. So you want to have enough discomfort that you produce change and your brain changes, right? But you don't want it to discourage you. Another thing, when defining your goals, you want to think about this concept that a YouTuber, I'll put his name up on the screen, introduced to me that I really liked, is defining goals based on inspiration versus desperation. And you want to, it might be obvious, try to fall in line with setting goals that are more inspirational to you, that have hope behind them, that have your values behind them, right? And not this scarcity mindset that I desperately need them. You want to have that space to be creative, to feel like you can learn, that you can fail, that you can grow, right? You don't want to be in scarcity, but kind of create your goals out of abundance and inspiration. And then the last couple of things that I'll say about setting these goals is you want to have these larger than life goals first before you move on to setting more specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, and goals that you can evaluate and reward yourself for. So yes, that's that SMARTER acronym. But first you want to set those larger than life goals. The way that I use my planner and the way that I use my goal system is to set 1 to 3 larger yearly goals. And then I break up my SMART goals based on my quarters. So that might be an idea that you're using, and we'll talk a little bit later about how 3 months is the little sweet spot that we try to use and that the research supports in really going after these SMART goals. Anything longer, our brain tends to lose focus and doesn't quite pay attention as well. And anything shorter, we don't really have the stretch or the amount of time needed to actually achieve some big moves that are going to move us closer to those larger goals that we have for the year. The next shift I want to talk about is our ideas around future-focused thinking, and I want to shed light on the truth about using visualization to motivate you. So it isn't cut and dry about if visualization actually works for achieving your goals. The research shows that not only does it depend, but you can tweak the type of visualization you use to be more effective in your goal-getting journey. So first, let's talk about some in-the-moment techniques when you feel unmotivated to do the work that you need to do to get to your goals. So before starting, if it's something you like doing, visualize the end point and all the great feelings of reaching the finish line of your goal. If it's not something you like doing, or if it's kind of like a drudge or something you're dreading, imagine what will happen if you don't reach your goal. That's what you want to visualize. You actually want to use the negative visualization to motivate yourself. This activates the amygdala in our brain, the emotion center of our brain. And Dr. Rick Hansen actually said our brain is like Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good. So this is due to the way our brain has evolved to avoid sticks, if you will, making our avoiding pain circuits in the brain much stronger than our seeking reward center. So you want to be specific and identify your fears and disappointments of not doing this work. So if it's something you like to do, just to reiterate, you're going to visualize the end point. That's going to motivate you to get the work done, to do the work. If it's something you're dreading and that you haven't really gotten the habit of doing, you want to visualize the actual bad thing that will happen if you don't reach your goal. And this is actually going to be more motivating for you because the way our brains are more wired to avoid pain than we are to seek reward. So be specific, identify identify your fears and your disappointments, and then get to work. Another visualization technique you can try to use when you're trying to make something a habit that's backed by science is imagining the exact steps of the process can help make the process a habit and increase your motivation. So as you're trying to get something into habit for yourself, let's say you want to get on the treadmill every morning, you want to visualize every step in that process, from sitting down, putting your socks on, putting your shoes on, walking to your treadmill or walking outside, doing your run, coming back in, taking your shower, the whole thing. You want to visualize each step in the process. And doing this reduces the friction and the apprehension, because once you have an idea of the exact steps, the task can actually seem less daunting once your brain has had a chance to actually wrap around it. For example, so in our running treadmill example, once your brain has an idea of what you're actually going to do, you don't actually feel so hesitant to actually doing the work. Then there's also things that you can do as far as visualization upon starting the work to help you be more focused and more motivated and actually have the energy to get this type of work done. This is science that comes directly from Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford's podcast. He talks about how upon starting your work, you want to focus on an external point of focus for 30 to 90 seconds. 90 is more ideal. By narrowing and expanding your visual attention. So you want to focus on a point for like 30 to 90 seconds. You can blink, but this places your body and brain into a state of readiness to get into action. So he's a researcher that does a lot of research on our eyes and our visual systems, and a lot of research in the visual systems has showed how we can use our eyes to not only focus and attend, but also to relax, and vice versa. So I really like this little technique that you can use by just focusing. And if you think about it, it really makes sense if you think of how we evolved, of like how to take action, like having to concentrate and focus. Like doing that puts your brain in a state of readiness, almost like you're about to pounce, right? So if you do that right before you're working, that's going to increase your motivation. It's going to increase your energy levels to actually get the work done, and by helping you focus and attend more. So back to the science, this is because doing that little focused exercise from 30 to 90 seconds activates our parasympathetic nervous system. And he actually says our eyes are literally exposed pieces of our brain, and they can be used as tools to wire our brains for motivation and for productivity. And then obviously this must be coupled with action. So here's how to use this technique in a practical way. So the first step is 30 to 90 seconds of narrow visual focus on a circular point of focus near where you're going to be working, i.e. like your laptop or the treadmill. And then this focus increases your blood pressure and the dopamine in your brain, and then you initiate the work, either physical work or cognitive work, and you will work more productively, but you'll also perceive the work you're doing to be much easier. So another visualization technique that you can use is from our friend Abraham Hicks from the Law of Attraction. And this is something that they call imagination workshops. And the science to back this up is you only want to do this if you don't have resistance to meeting your goal, meaning you don't have any doubts or it's not hard for you to believe in your goal. But if it's something that you believe in and you want to wire your brain to be more focused on getting there and be more motivated, you can use these imagination workshops whereby you simply take some time to close your eyes and sort of visualize and imagine everything that it is that you want to bring into your life, i.e. your goals. So if you're trying to maybe one day buy a house, you imagine yourself signing the papers, you imagine what type of house you want, you imagine maybe the process being easy, you imagine maybe, not having to take out a large loan, whatever it is, however you want that process to be, you imagine it, and it helps your brain really focus on getting there because you can see that end point. But again, you want to do this only if you don't have resistance. Other interesting techniques that science backs up is a lot of studies recently that have been done on implementation intention. So you want to imagine challenges and overcoming obstacles. So I remember a technique that Brendan Bouchard offered was at the beginning of your day, you want to think about what do I want and what can get in my way, and then how are you going to overcome that thing that can get in your way. This just kind of primes you to already be set to know that life is not perfect. There may be things that come up, but I can do hard things. I can keep going. And you might even already have a plan in your mind on how you will overcome potential challenges. And even if it isn't the exact challenge that you face, you already have your mind around being resilient and pushing forward even in the face of things not being perfect. And then probably one of the most popular visual techniques that we've all heard about are vision boards, using post-it notes up on your mirror or using lists. So enter the post-it note fallacy. Many people put post-it notes affirming that they will reach their goals on the mirrors to motivate them to actually accomplish their goals. The same is done with vision boards or goal lists. But the research shows that these things don't actually motivate us to accomplish our goals. In fact, studies show they promote relief and calming sensations when we visualize ourselves meeting our goals, which is the opposite state we need to take action to do those goals. So instead, visualizing yourself accomplishing your goals with vision boards and post-it note affirmations are best for the first stage of goal achievement, which is defining your goals. This is why visualization techniques I mentioned before about envisioning success are only really helpful when you are already motivated and believe you will achieve your goal. If you want to use them to remind yourself of your goals, be sure you're moving them around in location, because these things quite frequently, what data shows is they get kind of lost in the background. Our brains start to get used to them after a while, and they start reminding us. So like every quarter, trying to move where your vision board is. And the same goes for actually telling people about a goal before you've started doing the work. Accountability is great, but it can work against us if it's not used in the right way. So another example that Dr. Huberman uses is if you tell someone that you're going to write a book. The praise you get from others is so satisfying and so dopamine eliciting, if you will. You basically lose motivation to actually do the work because your brain kind of already feels accomplished just from the praise that you get and that connection from telling someone. So you want to be sure if you tell someone your goals that you've already done it, because that's going to give your brain that calm relief feeling. The same with our vision boards, it gives us that calm relief feeling. So those are best to do things like set our goals, to remind us of our goals if we move them around, but not actually to get motivated to do the work, to get into action to achieve our goals. The next shift we're going to talk about is this uphill battle mentality to autopilot systems. This might shock you, but reaching your goals can actually be easy. If you have the right systems in place, it can actually feel like it's automatic. The first way that we can talk about making this feel so automatic is leaning into intrinsic motivation, which can put your goal work on autopilot. Intrinsic motivation is like doing something because you find it personally rewarding or enjoyable, rather than external rewards or pressure. It's the kind of motivation that comes from within you. It's driven by your own interest, your own curiosity, or your sense of satisfaction. When you're intrinsically motivated to do something, you do it because you genuinely love doing it, or you find it interesting, not because someone is rewarding you or because you have a fear of punishment. It's because you truly love this thing, right? So for example, imagine you love playing a musical instrument. If you practice and play because you enjoy the music and the process of learning, that's intrinsic motivation. On the other hand, if you play just to win a prize or to avoid getting in trouble by your parents, that's more extrinsic motivation. In essence, intrinsic motivation is about finding joy, fulfillment, or personal satisfaction in the activity itself, making it more likely that you're going to engage in it willingly and with enthusiasm, hence the autopilot. And then an extrinsic motivation requires more effort. The next way you're going to put things on autopilot is using habits and routines. So studies emphasize the importance of consistency in behavior for goal attainment. As such, habits provide a structured and a consistent approach to working towards our goals. They also tend to take less motivation since they're already on autopilot. So there are 3 important evidence-based hacks that you can use when forming habits. The first is to use procedural memory to solidify a habit. Many athletes do this before games to boost performance, which is to mentally rehearse each step or procedure involved in the habit that you're trying to submit into your brain before you begin. It reduces mental friction, which we talked about before, because your mind has a chance to wrap around what you're about to do, and in doing so, it makes it easier to take action. So we kind of talked about that before as well. The second piece is to anchor yourself to what state you want to be in your habit versus a strict time of day. This type of flexibility helps you be more adherent to your habit and your goal. So for instance, I like to work out after my kids go to school, but before I start work. So in the literature, this is called task bracketing. So I'm not so stringent on this exact time I'm going to be down there working out, but it gives me this flexibility between this period of my kids going to school and me going to work. I'm going to go down and work out. I work out in my basement. And so that way I have the flexibility if I need to start a load of dishes or if I need to go do something upstairs, I can have that flexibility, and I'm more likely to get my workout done versus just having it be in this strict time period. So again, I'm just anchored to the state of mind I want to be in, basically my kids going versus a strict time. And then for most, it's going to be best to place habits that require more effort to do them in the morning and the easier habits for you to do in the afternoon. If you've ever read the book Eat That Frog, and science supports this, it's better to do those harder tasks, especially those brain work tasks in the morning when we're more alert, than to try to do them during that afternoon crash of energy. All right, the next shift in mindset we're going to talk about is everybody gets a trophy to effective rewards and accountability. Moving on, I hate to break it to you, but most of what you've heard about rewards and accountability is completely false. So here's what the science says on rewards and how to use them to motivate yourself in your goal-getting journey. The first thing from the research that I want to share with you guys is to give yourself positive reinforcement just for doing the first step. So if you're going to work out, you put on those shoes, you're now about to go work out, kind of give yourself a mental pat on the back. This is due to something called the reward prediction error in our brain and the release of dopamine, which is the motivation and pleasure neurotransmitter, even when we anticipate something we want. Okay? The next part of rewards I want to talk about is random rewards. So you want to flip a coin, baby. Yes, you want to flip a coin to decide if you're going to give yourself a reward. So positive reinforcement, like taking a moment to praise yourself or reward yourself with a small break, is most motivating when it's relatively small and random. If we don't know when it's coming, our brain is more motivated to keep working for that dopamine to get it. So think about slot machines. That's why people get addicted, because they don't know if they're going to get rewarded, so they keep pulling that trigger. You want to kind of use that same logic when rewarding yourself so you can keep being motivated to do the work. And then one of the most crucial steps in the process when it comes to this new science on goals is concrete goal action steps and tracking. So you want to devise a clear action plan, like the strategies and the 12-week year that I talk a lot about on my channel. And research from Dr. Goldwitzwer, I'm going to put her name up because I'm sure I butchered that, tells us that combining goal setting with implementation intention, so specific plans for when, where, and how a goal will be achieved, increases the likelihood of goal success. You can also use SMARTer goals. That's that acronym again, which stands for specific, measurable, realistic, timely, evaluating your goals along the way and rewarding yourself. And basically you want to focus on quantifying actions for those more qualitative goals, or those goals that really depend on other people. You want to put them in your own control and come up with a clear plan on how you're going to get there. So for example, a goal like I want to gain 100 YouTube subscribers next month would turn into goals based on what are the quantitative actions that will help you get there, such as I'm going to post one new video each week and ask people to subscribe in each video. Those are those actions that you are in control of that you can take. And here are directives from goal researcher Dr. Maya Shankar to make these SMARTer goals even more effective. So you want to define goals as approach goals instead of avoiding goals. For example, I want to eat 2 plant-based meals per day versus I want to stop eating meat. This is because accomplishing approach goals increases our motivation along our goal-getting journey by eliciting feelings of pride and accomplishment and tapping into our alert systems, while accomplishing avoid goals, goals that are focused on avoiding things, creates feelings of calm and relief, our rest systems, which are the opposite of motivation. So be sure to set your goals, if you can, as much as possible in the approach sense of what you are going to do, not what you're going to avoid doing. You also want to set your goal in the same state as when you'll be pursuing it. We talked about this a little bit in the habits. This is going to help you be more realistic, actually. So if you set a goal to work out in the midst of actually doing that workout, you're going to be more realistic about what you can do, how long you can do it, versus setting it when you just had a cup of coffee and you haven't been going to the gym and you're saying you're going to go 7 days a week for an hour. So try to set those goals in the same state of mind if you can, as much as possible. The research says you're going to be more realistic and motivated to actually do the work. Another way she talks about making these SMARTer goals even more effective is adding slack. For example, I want to make 4 out of every 6 YouTube videos. Yes, I want to make them every week, but I'm going to give myself that 2 to 3 get out of jail free cards. It's going to help you be more effective. And Dr. Shankar also talked about capitalizing on the fresh start effect. So she referenced research by Katie Milkman and talked about how we know that at the start of any new year, any new week, or even a new job, we are more motivated at those fresh starts. So try to find ways to give yourself a fresh start, even if it's just capitalizing off of the start of a new day. Whatever you can do to get your mind to think, hey, this is a new opportunity, our brains really love that. And then some ideas that I also want to share about making these SMART goals more effective is to write these things down. It's the most effective way to really embed these things into our nervous system is pen and paper. Also, the literature is pretty clear that using 12 weeks, which is about 3-month intervals or 90 days for your action plans, are the most effective for achieving your goals. And you want to assess this weekly. So you set them out for 12 weeks, but you want to take a look at how you're doing each week. It's also kind of important to think about the middle problem when we talk about these action plans. And the middle problem in goal achievement refers to the decrease in motivation that may come up during the journey towards reaching that goal. It's like being in the middle of the path or process and encountering difficulties or that declining energy as we get to the middle of achieving our goal, and tanks in motivation that can make it harder to keep moving forward. So imagine you set a goal to learn a new skill like playing a sport or mastering an instrument. The beginning is when you're excited, you're motivated, and the end is when you're also motivated to begin because you're close to getting to that goal that you want to achieve, and it feels really inevitable because you can see the end. The middle is where you might face difficulties. Maybe you find certain aspects challenging, you encounter obstacles, or you start feeling, just less motivated overall. So what does the science say about overcoming the middle problem, you might ask? It's kind of like eating an elephant, if we can use that metaphor, even though I love elephants. First, you want to acknowledge the elephant in the room. You want to acknowledge that you have lost motivation, that you're in the middle. This is going to help you be able to take the next steps. The next step after you acknowledge that elephant is to eat it one bite at a time, i.e. you're going to break it up into chunks. This can be done by focusing on your weekly goals instead of your yearly goals or even your 12-week goals. What are you doing each week? You want to break it down so your mind has less to focus on. Step 3, put on some music, i.e. temptation bundling. So you want to bundle the hard work with things that are tempting that you like to do. For example, putting on a podcast or some music while you get on the treadmill, and be sure to reserve this temptation to only when you're doing the hard work. Otherwise, it loses its appeal and you'll find it's not as motivating. So you want to find yourself getting really excited to do that thing because that's the only time you get to do your, maybe it's your gossip show or whatever, your guilty pleasure or whatever's really tempting for you, only when you do that hard work. And then I do want to offer you just some other hacks to face this hard work. So you can use the scare visualization that I mentioned above by visualizing what's going to happen if you don't do this goal. Another hack is to use your circadian clock to schedule tasks that need the most attention. Studies show that we have increased focus after 30 minutes, 3 hours, and 11 hours after waking. So after waking 30 minutes, 3 hours after we wake, and 11 hours after we wake, you're going to have that peak focus. And that's going to really help you to really get these things done. And finally, I want to leave you with a wellness cheat sheet. Neuroscience is very trendy right now, but it's important to remember that the mind, brain, body, and spirit are all important and not just brain hacks being important. Although I am a neuropsychologist, I know we need to take into collective the whole picture. And in fact, our mind, spirit, and the rest of the body can change the brain in a way and the way that the brain actually functions. So it's important to look at our total wellness. Interestingly, studies have shown that when we have low energy, i.e. low mood, poor sleep, poor nutrition, we perceive things to be harder. And when we perceive things as harder, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're actually going to be harder for us, and that decreases our motivation. For example, some people struggling with depression find it even hard to get out of the bed some days. And this same research has even shown that people with poor energy and poor wellness perceive hills, actual real hills, to be steeper and distances to be longer than others that don't have this problem. So really, our wellness really impacts how hard we perceive things to be, and then actually how hard they will be due to the self-fulfilling prophecy. So here's what I call the wellness cheat sheet to make sure you have a holistically healthy foundation to pursue your goals, in addition to all the other things we discussed about achieving your goals this year. First up, nutrition. You want to focus on majority high fiber plant diet and fermented foods. It's not just because I'm into healing my gut right now, but a lot of research shows it's really great for our wellness, just reducing that meat and increasing high fiber foods. Sleep. You want to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Without getting sleep, it takes its toll and increases our risk for things like dementia, mood disorders, all the gamut. It just makes working much harder. It's almost identical to ADHD. We know that in neuropsychology. So make sure that you're getting your sleep and getting high quality sleep as much as possible. And the last piece of that body wellness that I think it's important to mention is exercise, particularly cardio. Getting that oxygen to your brain is going to be helpful with focus, attention, energy levels, but doing things like yoga and Pilates and strength training are also very important and helpful for your peace of mind and your ability to stay motivated on your goal-getting journey. When it comes to taking care of your mind, some things that we know from research that's really important, and just from life and many spiritual practices talk about are things like mindfulness, reflection, and stress management. So, mindfulness, bringing your attention back to the present moment time and time again, trying to stay in the present moment, and doing practices that help you make contact with the present moment is going to be helpful to ground you, to relieve stress, and to maintain your mood. Self reflection is good for personal growth and being able to continue on this journey, and managing your stress levels. We don't want our cortisol levels to be too high. That's going to impact the way that we think and the way that we show up in the world. And some things that I recommend for taking care of your spirit are making sure that you stay in contact with your purpose, making sure that you are thinking about what are you here for, what do you want to leave this world with is going to be important on your goal getting journey, but also just for your well-being. Another thing that's great for your spirit is connection. We are, what's the word, social creatures. Even if you're introverted like myself, connection is very important. You don't want to be too isolated, so connect with people that are most important to you. This is going to help your spiritual wellness. And then the last point of spiritual wellness that I will mention is values, being sure that you know what's most important to you. You're staying connected with things that bring you joy, like learning or art or whatever those things that are most important to you, family. But just staying in touch with our values and being committed to take action. Here comes the acceptance and commitment therapy tenets that I love. Being committed to take action towards your values, even in the face of discomfort and hard emotions like anxiety or depression or grief. Even if we have to carry that in the background, how can we face it, those things, without avoiding them, but also taking committed action towards what we value most is how we're going to live the most meaningful life. If you want more information on how to use the 12-week year strategies to make your action plan to achieve your goals, I have a video, a very comprehensive video that walks you through that entire process for you to watch next here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, cheers to planning, manifesting, and enjoying your dream life. Namaste.